If you'd like to work along with me at home, open the Project Files folder, Lesson 7 folder, and Printing 05. If you're continuing from the previous video, you can continue to work in the same workbook we had there. First thing we're going to do is delete the new worksheet here. So down in the bottom left-hand corner, we'll right-click on New and choose Delete. We'll go back to the Home tab and then Control Home on the keyboard so we're all back in the same place. Where I'd like to point out that the very first thing in this worksheet is cell A1, and then off to the right you can see Muddy Run Rafting. There's no way to type anything above this and have it show up in the worksheet when we print it. But let's take a look at Print Preview. In Print Preview, we can actually see that there is an area above that top green cell where there's something going on. That's the header area. And also down here at the bottom you can see the footer. If we zoom in on that with the zoom control, that's this guy right here, you can quite clearly see that it says Original at the top. That's the name of the worksheet, by the way. And then down at the bottom it says Page 1. Well, how do you work in the header and footer if you can't get to it in normal view? Well, in previous versions of Excel, you had to do this from a dialog box, which you could have gotten to by going to File and then Page Setup. Here you'd actually have to go to File and Print and then click the Page Setup button right here. And then we go to the header and footer part of the dialog box. Now that's the old-fashioned way of doing it, and really the most inconvenient way, because this is a terrible dialog box. It gives you almost no clue as to what you're supposed to do with it. So we'll come back and look at it later. For now, we're just going to cancel it, and I'm going to show you the new improved way of doing things, starting with Excel 2007, and then back on the View tab, Page Layout. We looked at page layout in the last video. Now we're going to look at page layout as a way to work with our headers and footers. The header area of the page layout view is set up in 3 different sections. You can hover your mouse over them and see them in blue. Anything you physically type into a header is going to appear at the top of every page in your document. So here in this top left-hand corner, I'm just going to type in Muddy Run Rafting. Let's take a look at that in Print Preview. We have to get out of the header first by clicking in the body of the document, and then we can do Print Preview, and we'll see over here that we have Muddy Run Rafting on page 1, there's page 2, page 3, and page 4. But what is this word Original? Well, that's the name of the worksheet that we're previewing. Back in the View tab, you can see down here in the bottom left-hand corner the name of the worksheet. Well, that wasn't typed in. If you click here, you're going to see that there's actually a code in here that causes Excel to look at the name of the worksheet tab and automatically place that in. So if we were to change the name of the worksheet, this would pull in the name of the worksheet, whatever that might be at the time. Now take a look in the ribbon, and you're going to notice that we have the Header and Footer Tools tab with a Design tab underneath it. This is an example of a contextual tab that we talked about back in our Lesson 1 series. Contextual tabs appear only whenever they're needed, and the tools they contain are dedicated to the object we're working with at the time. In this case, we're working with the header, and when we click on the Design tab, we get a whole bunch of tools here that are specific to this header in the document. The Header and Footer Elements group contains icons that inserts codes into our header or footer. And that's what we see here with the worksheet name in the center section. I'm going to delete that, and let's put in a different element. How about if we put in the file name? So we'll click on the File Name button, and this just enters the little code. To see the result of that, just click down in the worksheet someplace. And here you can see the name of the workbook, Printing 05. At the bottom of the worksheet is where we normally put in our page numbers. That's the footer area. And you can see here that we have something going on here in the center. Again, we have 3 sections. You can click in any one of them to type. And here we have a little code that puts in the page number. Let's change that so that it tells us not only the page number, but how many pages there are. We'll delete the current code, and then in the header and footer elements, we'll choose page number, type in a space, type of space, and then choose number of pages. When you click up in the document, you'll see that that now says 1 of 4. Now, that's one way we can do it, but there's an easier way to put that particular code in here. Let's just delete that one. Over on the left-hand side, we have a header button and a footer button. Let's go to the footer button. And here we have some presets. If we say page 1 of question mark, that does the same thing that we just did by typing it. It inserts a code that you only see when you click in that part of the footer. Let's click over in the right section of the footer. This would be a good place to put in a date. Back in the Design tab, we'll just find the Current Date button. If you'd like to insert a picture in your header or footer, nothing could be simpler. Let's go back to the top of the document, and we'll just click in the right section of the header area, click on the Design tab, and then choose the Picture button. This opens a dialog box that allows us to go a-searching for the picture that we want. In this case, I'd like to go to the Project Files folder. Mine's on the desktop. Open Project Files and Lesson 7, and then open Raft Guy. As long as we're in this little block here, all we see is the code for the picture. But click down into the worksheet someplace and you'll actually see the picture embedded in the document behind all of your numbers and text. Now that picture is a little big for our worksheet, so let's resize it so that it fits nicely in the top right-hand corner. To do that, we have to go back into the same block in the header where that picture is located, and then choose Format Picture. Here we can adjust the size by spinning down or typing in a new height and width, or we can just scale it by percentage. Let's scale this to 50%. The Lock Aspect Ratio checkbox makes sure that when you change the height, that the width will automatically be changed once you get out of that dialog box. So if you click OK, you can see that it didn't squash the little guy. To me, the picture still looks a little too large, and of course it's sitting behind some of this stuff, so maybe we can change the size of the picture and also give it a little more room to breathe. Let's go back into the header area again, click where the picture is, go to the Design tab, and format the picture, and let's bring this down another 25%. So we'll say 25% of what we already have there. That's going to be a little better, and then we're going to increase the area dedicated to the header. To do that, we're going to go back into Print Preview, get out of that header area by clicking in the document someplace, go to Print Preview, and turn on the margins. You'll notice that there are two lines that come across the top of the document. The first line controls the margin from the top of the physical page to the first printable line in the document. And the second line controls the height of the header area. We're going to drag that second line down a little bit and scroll over to the right and see what this looks like. See, we can come down a little more just to give that guy some room to breathe. Just like that. Okay, we're ready to go back to the View tab, and excellent. That's just what we were looking for. Now, one last thing to point out. I'm going to click in the middle section of the header and go to the Design tab, and you'll notice that there's a whole section here called Options. Well, what are these things? Scale with Document just means that if you scale your document, as we saw in the previous video, forcing it to fit on X number of pages, that the fonts will resize so that they fit properly on those pages as well. Align with page margins means that your left header will align itself with the left edge of the page, and your right header will align itself with the right edge of the page. Different first page allows you to have a header that's different on the first page from the rest of the document, much like you can do in a word processor. Different odd and even pages allows you to have a different header on page 1, 3, and 5 than you do on pages 2, 4, and 6. Now, having said all of this, it's time now to go back to the Stone Ages and take a look at that old dialog box, because some of you I know are using Excel 2003 or earlier. So let's take a look at how that works. We're going to go back to the Page Layout tab. Click down in the document someplace, and then click the dialog box launcher under Page Setup. Go to the Header and Footer tab. Here you can see an example of the header that we set up here, and the footer is down at the bottom. To create a customized header here, you need to click the Custom Header button. And here you can see the three header sections that we were working within before. The buttons that you see at the top are the same elements that we saw in the previous view, and you can just hover over the buttons to see their names. However, if you do this in some previous versions of Excel, these screen tips don't show up and they don't identify themselves, which makes it even more frustrating. But once you get into this dialog box, everything we did in Page Layout view, you can do right from here. I'm going to cancel out of there. And I wanted to show you we have this drop-down list that contains all of the presets that we saw back in the other view. What presets am I talking about? Well, here we are back in the Design tab of the page header, and over here are the presets I was just telling you about. And now you know that's how you create headers and footers in your Excel workbook.